Wir schauen hier gleich mal auf Dressschuhe und den Umstand, dass die Qualität dieser besonders im Designer- und Luxusbereich bei vielen Anbietern in letzter Zeit drastisch gesunken ist. Ich spiegle dann auch gleich den Beitrag eines anderen Kanals, auf dem ich gerne ab und zu vorbeischaue und der genau das anhand des Herstellers Gucci anschaulich belegt. Ja, Qualität, die ist eigentlich egal, wohin du als Konsument schaust, aktuell im freien Fall begriffen. Man kann das bei Autos sehen, wo es immer mehr Rückrufaktionen und Verarbeitungsmängel gibt. Man sieht das bei Uhren sehr stark, wo der Markt immer mehr mit handwerklichem Müll und oder Smartwatch Billigware geflutet wird. Und man sieht das natürlich auch bei Kleidung und Mode, wo es natürlich auf der einen Seite immer mehr Fake-Ware gibt, auf der anderen aber auch regelrecht dreist überteuerte Ware auf den Markt geworfen wird. Bei Lederwaren, also Taschengürtel und wie hier Schuhe, ja, da zeigt sich dieser Trend in besonders gravierendem Ausmaß. Und gerade bei Designermarken wie Boss, Versace, Hilfiger, Job und so weiter, da sollte man sehr vorsichtig sein. Was du dort bekommst, wie immer mehr Kunden beklagen, hat in den seltensten Fällen noch was mit Handwerk und Wertschöpfung zu tun. Und der Nimbus der Marke, der wird hier oftmals einfach schamlos ausgenutzt. Als Kunde solltest du wirklich die Extrameile bei deinen Recherchen vor dem Kauf gehen, indem du nämlich herausfindest, wo und unter welchen Bedingungen produziert wird. Und gerade deswegen empfehle ich ja auch Marken wie Lotusse, Spanien beispielsweise, Loke, England mit Abstrichen, die Waren aus europäischer Herstellung von Uli Schott oder auch die wirklich preiswerten, aber guten Schuhe von Henry Stevens alias Shoe Passion. Zwischen 200 und 300 Euro, die wirst du freilich zwangsläufig ausgeben müssen, das ist ganz klar und es ist natürlich immer besser, als in Modesneakern herumzulaufen und das als erwachsener Mann. Sieh dich ruhig mal bei den ausgewählten Links um, die ich dir unter das Video setze. Ja, ich überlasse dich jetzt der, wie ich finde, unterhaltsam gemachten Mini-Doku. Wenn dich das Thema interessiert, findest du sicher die ein oder andere nützliche Info.
The leather on these $1,400 dress shoes is going to blow your mind. Do you see how clean it is? Do you see the uniformity of texture and color? It is of such high quality that to the untrained eye, it would even appear to be plastic. But it's not. And of course it's not. This is one of the most expensive shoes in the world we're talking about. It's real full-grain calf skin that comes from one of the best tanneries in the entire world. So there's this thing called corrected grain leather, which is a piece of full grain leather that's had the top layer, the grain, physically altered in some way or corrected. Corrected grain leather can be pretty awesome, like in the case of stamping, where a piece of high quality full grain leather is physically imprinted with a pattern to give it a unique aesthetic. This is pebble grain. This is hatch grain. This is what happened when I asked Midjourney to put Asmongold's face on a shoe.
He thought that World War II was in the 1800s.
Thanks for unpausing, Asmon. Oh, he's not gonna watch this video. Cringe. But there's also another type of corrected grain leather where the grain is sanded down and then a synthetic lacquer is applied over it. It is a great way to take an inexpensive, cosmetically defective piece of leather like this, where you can see scars and other natural blemishes, and turn it into a clean, uniform, leather-looking material like this. And that's why you often see this kind of veneered corrected grain leather in mass production items like cars and furniture, but also shoes. And indeed, most shoes you find at the department store between $50 and $150 will be this synthetic lacquered corrected grain leather, which is why they can be so affordable and profitable. But above $150 and especially $200, there is no reason you should be settling for anything less than real full grain leather. Plot twist! These $1,400 shoes use the same cheap barrel free Epstein pineapple fucking plastic fucking leather that you find at JCPenney. This JCPenney. Sweet. Which one should we do first? See how it pools up like that? It's not actually soaking in. As your first sign. See all that? That's that paint. It took me so long to write the script for this video because I simply could not find the words to describe just how utterly surreal and insane this is. But we're going to talk about that later because we still have the entire rest of the shoe to cover. And honestly, ignoring price for the moment, and trust me, we will return to price. It's not that bad. This is a Blake stitch shoe, which means you have one stitch that holds the whole shoe together that runs from the insole through the upper layers, through the midsole, and then through the outsole. This is a perfectly acceptable way to construct a high-quality leather dress shoe. And one of the biggest benefits of Blake stitch shoes versus the more popular Goodyear welt is that it requires less material in the footbed, which results in a lighter shoe to walk in. I sure hope this one benefit of Blake stitch construction is not invalidated later on by poor design decisions. It's got a half rubber, half leather top lift, a full leather heel stack, full leather outsole, full leather midsole, and full leather insole. It's got a solid steel shank. I mean, this is good. Those are the high quality materials you would typically expect to see in an expensive dress shoe as opposed to something like leather board or plastic. And they're put together pretty tightly, right? There's no gaps in the footbed. Look, I'm trying to be charitable here, okay? There's no delamination of the lining from the upper. The stitching all around is dense and uniform with a consistent stitch density. The seams where the different layers of leather meet on the heel stack and the sole edge are sanded perfectly flush and are dyed very uniform. And even the laces are of a high quality. They're a tight, waxed weave with no fraying threads. And even beyond just being well made, honestly, there's some things about this shoe that I think are pretty cool. They've got toe plates, which not only add a decorative touch, but also extend the life of the shoe by reinforcing the area of the sole that deteriorates the fastest. There is a thin foam pad in the forefoot, which provides a little extra comfort. There is a nice sculptural ridge on the sole bottom of the shoe, reflecting a quality we often see in bespoke shoes, the fiddleback waist. There is this lovely decorative dye work along the edge of the sole, and my personal favorite, these have a closed channel stitch, which is where that main stitch that holds the whole shoe together that runs along the sole bottom is covered by a flap of leather that not only is a sign of high quality craftsmanship, but also it extends the life of the shoe. And it protects against water wicking up through that thread and getting into your socks, which is a common drawback for Blake stitch shoes. Some of these features, like the foam in the forefoot and the closed channel stitch, I've myself never even seen on a Blake stitch shoe. And all of them add to the quality of construction. But there's still problems. I don't know how to organize this video because I want it to be a balanced viewing experience between good and bad, as I try to do with all my reviews. But I'm just gonna be honest, guys. It's mostly bad from here on out. There's no heel pad, which is definitely something you'd want on a Blake stitch shoe because there's no inherent shock absorption that you have in Goodyear welted shoes from that cork mid layer. And it already has foam in the forefoot. Why wouldn't you do that, you silly little goose? This steel shank is thick, more so than it needs to be. This makes the shoe heavy and unbalanced on the back end. And at this price, it should be wood or even carbon fiber. The suede heel counter doesn't appear to be that nice nappy suede that you would typically expect. It's heavily sanded down almost to the point where it kind of loses its grip. It just seems cheap. The interior lining and sock liner also appear to be that cheap corrected grain leather with that characteristic plastic appearance. The heel counter is leather board, which again is a composite leather material.
Shrek?
Well, that's kind of shitty. There, do you see it? Do you believe me? You believe me now, Bernice? I'm retarded. It should be real leather, both at this price and well below. The toe stiffener... There, can you see it? Are we in focus? That's it. Merry Christmas! It's kind of okay. Again, from a functional standpoint, it's fine, but... You know, really at this price, you would expect to see, you know, a full grain leather, I think, or at least a leather board. You can see remnants of the glue left over in the broguing, sloppy craftsmanship, and then the toe plate, which is like one of the coolest features about this shoe. Right? Well, yeah. If it was installed correctly, see how the plate isn't flush with the rest of the shoe and the sole edge? That's not good. And not just from a craftsmanship standpoint. Water will seep into those crevices and deteriorate the leather and the stitching from the inside out. But we're still not done. See those screws popping out? I sure hope you don't plan on wearing your fancy, shiny new $1,400 shoes on, you know, a floor, because I'd be pretty concerned you are going to scratch the absolute out of it. Not to mention that, once again, this is totally unacceptable from a craftsmanship standpoint. But here's the real problem, guys. And yes, we are returning to price now. Even if all these issues were corrected and upgrades made, from a materials and construction standpoint, these would still be worth maybe $250. We'll talk more about alternative brands later on, but keep in mind, guys, at this price and even well below it, you should absolutely expect either a Goodyear welted or hand welted construction shoe, both of which reflect greater cost of production and superior craftsmanship. Unless there is something else exceptional about it, you should not expect to spend more than $300 for a well-made Blake shoe. And even $250 feels generous considering the single most important material in the entire product is the lowest quality form of leather you can get. Everything good and bad we just discussed are candles in a burning building. These are $1,400 and they use plastic fucking... Not yet. I promise we will get to it. We still have to talk about... Now you might say, okay, Christopher, but I'm not buying it for the materials. Real leather, fake leather, steel shank, like, whatever. I just want a good-looking, expensive-looking shoe so that I can show all my friends how much more smarter and morally superior I am to them, because what else are friends even for? I'm sorry, let's just get this out of the way now. I am a judgmental bitch. I am a huge bitch. I just want to get that out of the way now. I wasn't born this way, but this is what I've become. Okay. Gucci is a fashion company. It is a designer company, and its priority is not with materials and construction, it's with creating well-designed, good-looking products. So do they look good or what? The last is the model upon which the shoe has been formed. It is the overall geometry, the shape of the upper. It is the foundation of a shoe's aesthetic insofar as it is a sculptural, but also functional work of art. And much like any good sculpture, there should be cohesion among its proportions, its curves and edges. There should be a feeling of rightness when you look at it. Whether it's big and round or thin and slender, curvy or angular, masculine or feminine, it should be easy on the eyes and draw you in, inviting your gaze to flow up and down its physical character without interruption. High-end shoes around this price, like these from Acme Shoemaker, typically feature a more slender, shapely last that just exudes subtlety and refinement. A sharp drop on the toe, a bulbous, seamless heel, a tightly curved waist, and a sloping angle down the forefoot, reflecting the natural asymmetry of your foot itself. Just look at them. They're beautiful. Now look at them next to Gucci. They're just kind of dumpy. It's blocky and heavy and just kind of basic. It doesn't have that characteristic flow you see on well-designed sculptural objects. You might say, oh, well, that's just because it's a wider shoe. No. Even insofar as we are talking about more classic, straightforward, wider lasts, it is still outshined by companies like Bridlin and Blackbird, both of which show that you can still have a balanced, cohesive design even within the context of a wider, simpler shoe. It's a bit benign to talk about the heated seats in your $100,000 sports car if the body of the car itself is ugly and made of plastic. The dye work on the sole bottom edge just isn't great. It stretches over the closed channel line at various points and also just looks like kind of thin, as if it was like drawn on with a Sharpie that's just like running out of ink. Seems a little nitpicky, right? Remember guys, at this price, what you are buying is more a work of art than simply something you put on your feet to go to the office every day. You are paying for the scarcity, the rarity of masterful creation, of the highest order of craftsmanship that exists in the world. And it is in these small, seemingly insignificant details that we distinguish a generic product made in a factory from one made by the few craftsmen in the world even capable of such perfection. Back to it. There's no welt fudging on the sole edge. These decorative ridges that you often see on high-end shoes that even cost well below what this does, they help frame the upper much like the frame of a painting. A flat sole edge can sometimes work aesthetically on more minimal footwear, like these Chelsea boots right here, for example, but for an Oxford, especially one as decorative as this, it just seems kind of flat and cheap and not aligned with the visual context of the rest of the shoe. The heel wheeling, it's nice that it's there and it is well done. The imprints are all even all around. Sometimes you can kind of see them like fade off a little bit, but it's not properly aligned with the heel layers, which just makes it look kind of off. And it's also awkwardly like in the middle of the heel stack when usually it runs like just along the top edge. And while the stitching is clean and consistent, the density is pretty lame. High stitch density is a sign of craftsmanship and aesthetic refinement and must be done by hand. But this stitch density, which you typically see on shoes between $200 and $400, is done by a machine and not a particularly impressive one. There is this cutout on the waist of the shoe. Usually you have what's called a beveled waist here, where the curvature of the sole edge reflects the curvature of the upper and combines with the curvature of the beveled or fiddleback sole bottom to create a sort of sculptural continuity that wraps around the three dimensions of the shoe. Here, you know, it's okay. I don't know that it reflects any high level of craftsmanship. I don't know that it adds anything from an aesthetic standpoint other than simply giving dimension to an otherwise flat surface, which is good, but again, it feels just sort of thrown in as opposed to thoughtfully implemented in a way that actually adds to the overall sculptural profile of the product. Oh my god, but they have the fiddleback waist! Oh wait, you mean it's just a shortcut imitation fiddleback waist made using a cheap insert, which would be cool for around $200, but not actually properly crafted with layers of cork or leather, which you would expect at this price? And even Gucci's insert itself is kind of pathetic. Indian company Bridlin achieves a far more pronounced and attractive bevel still with the use of an insert. And those are $250. And they're Goodyear welted. And then the broguing. The punch hole pattern that decorates the upper of the shoe. The punching itself is done cleanly all throughout the shoe with uniform spacing all throughout. As for the pattern itself, it's okay. It's nothing too special, though there are some nicer details that sort of visually suggest a forward movement or motion, a common motif in dress shoe patterning. The problem is this sophisticated, decorative, dynamic pattern. Excuse me, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? 1,400! Looks and feels out of place on a last that is wider, blockier, and heavier. Especially on the toe cap, it almost looks like it was a nicer pattern that was made for something more slender and refined, like a Graziano and Girling, and then sort of like stretched over, you know, the wider toe of this Gucci. Oh my god, voice crack. Sorry, I'm still hitting puberty, guys. It's been move on. Excuse me. The heel nails are nailed in nice and flush, and I do quite like this decorative stamping where the sole meets the heel stack. So what are they worth? Well, probably around $5. Not yet. Bear with me, my friends. We just have 2 more to go. I promise we are almost there. But Chris, they're made in Italy. Yeah, you know what that means? It means Italy makes a lot of dog shit these days. In fact, the problem of fake luxury companies using Italy's name to market expensive, cheaply made products has become so pervasive that, in fact, one of my top red flags when shopping for high-end products is that it's made in Italy, because it means that it is probably dramatically overpriced. Not always, but often. Are you Italian? Does that offend you? Does it make you angry? It absolutely should. You know what you should do about it? Number 1, tweet at me. Or get your government to create regulations to prevent shitty companies from taking advantage of your proud, well-deserved reputation for quality and abusing and destroying it so that they can profit off of deceiving consumers. But Chris, it's the brand name, it's the prestige, the legacy, it's the story of Gucci. That's why I'm buying this product. That's why I'm spending all this money. I don't want to generalize. I am sure there are people out there who genuinely feel connected to and value the story behind Gucci as a facet of human history. And I respect that. I'm gonna level with you guys. Not once in my entire life have I ever heard anyone say that kind of thing about an LVMH or Kering company and be able to recall even remotely basic details about the company's history. How old is the company? When was the founder born? Who was he or she? How did they get into the business? Who took over after the founder sold or passed away? What impact did they have on the company? Who's the current CEO? And it's okay not to know these things, right? But if you're gonna go on about how important legacy is to you, like, I just don't buy it. And I don't think they're lying, like, to me, but I think they're lying to themselves. I think what they really mean, but are too embarrassed to admit, is it's important to me that my friends and colleagues around me recognize the brand of the product I'm wearing so that they can understand how much more superior I am to them. If you want to spend your life keeping up with the Joneses, I will judge you. But I'm just some severely mentally ill man screaming at a camera in front of a Christmas sign. I don't want to demonize people for living their life the way they want to live their life. And even more so, I don't want to demonize people for being human. The point I want to make is that prestige is a valid reason to buy a company's product and even pay a little extra for it. But the reason these companies, these names and stories are prestigious, become prestigious, the reason anyone gave any shits about some random fat Italian dude in the early 1900s isn't because of the letters that happened to coincidentally spell out his name. It's because that name was a heuristic. It was a shortcut for consumers. It was an indicator of high quality, good value products. But the very moment a brand stops providing that, it loses that prestige. And the only thing you're showing off is that you've been scammed into buying a cheaply made product for the price of a 2004 Chrysler Town & Country. And people are starting to wake up to this. Caitlin Pulowski, who often discusses the decline of fake luxury firms through her own personal experience, has a great video on the rise of counterfeit luxury handbags among social media influencers. Now, fake luxury fashion TikTok stars aren't exactly society's best and brightest. Although neither am I. So they're taking some time with it, but you can see the wheels turning. You can see them grapple with the Stockholm Syndrome trauma bond they have with these abusive companies.
This looks higher quality. I think this one's real. This is a real counterfeit.
Really? Why do I need the real thing? I got it like that. People think it's the real thing, and if I'm buying a really, really well-made fake, nobody knows the difference. So what's the point?
And start to realize that maybe the quality of the product you are spending your hard-earned money on is more important than the name of the person who's selling it to you. Well, isn't that an idea? $150. That's how much these shoes are worth, guys. That's it. That's the big reveal. And that's the market value. I want to be clear. That's not the cost to produce, okay? That is the value, in my opinion, based on what else you can get on the market. In other words, if you gave me this shoe and didn't tell me the brand and just asked me, hey, how much do you think the company's charging for this product? I would guess around $150, maybe $200. And I wouldn't even have to cut it open, right? Just seeing corrected grain leather. It's like if you're making a shoe and charging more than $200, $250 for it, like, there's no reason to use corrected grain leather. Unless you're scamming your customers, of course. I'll give you some examples. Beckett Simonon, which I've probably already shown throughout this video, is really the most logical comparison. They only do Blake Stitch stuff. They're $220. They often go on sale for under $200. You know, there's things they don't have. They don't have the toe plate. It's a leatherboard insole, open channel stitch, but they do have a heel pad and a way more attractive last. And they actually fucking use real full grain calfskin for their upper lining. So there's ups and downs, but Beckett Simon isn't even the best value for the product itself. Bridlin, they have Blake Stitch for $111, which I still cannot get over. That's like really good, but we're not gonna, it's not the Bridlin show today. CNES has Blake's shoes. I think they're like usually around like a $200. Jay Butler, you know, there's others, guys, right? And, you know, from what I've seen, just about all of them will have superior craftsmanship and definitely a better value than, you know, these. And definitely a better price. And they use real leather. Sorry. The air is real dry here in Colorado. Now, if you want a fair value, but do want to get some of the highest quality you possibly can and have a budget of over $1,000, there are classic European brands like Gaziano and Girling, Enzo Benafe, and St. Crispin's. Then there are also more contemporary, often better value Asian brands like Yohei Fukuda, Acme Shoemaker, Yearn's artisanal line, and Ichigo Ichie. The primary drawback for all these companies, of course, being that they do not offer blackface sweaters or borderline pedophilic ad campaigns. But honestly, guys, I could sit here and list off brands all day, and that's because, aside from other LVMH and carrying companies, these could very well be the worst value for dress shoes in the entire world.